Planet Vero Radio. I am Cindy Schwartz, and this is Patient Partners. I have on the phone with me my co-host, Jeannie Roller. She is calling in from Indiana, and we're going to talk today about informed consent. We're going to talk a little bit about what actually is informed consent. What are the patients getting out of it? What do they need to know? Who do they really need to talk with? Is it actually informed consent? And a couple of ins and outs about what it actually means, or in a lot of cases, what it doesn't mean. So, Jeannie Roller, good to talk with you again for this 10 minutes. How are you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm doing okay. I want to get into this subject. I know you've done a lot of research on it. I have my own take on it from what happened to me and what I've been told by other people, some of the same people that you've talked with as well. And it's quite disturbing. And I think one of the biggest things that we can figure out about it is these are all legal papers, and they're not necessarily medical papers. And the legality of it, and we've all seen spoofs where the guy goes or the girl goes into the ER and they have you're not even coherent, blood's gushing out all over you. And the first thing they do is put a pen in your hand and say, sign this, we won't let you in until that happens.
Right. Or sometimes they don't even have you sign.
Okay, true.
Our case.
You want to get into that. So go ahead and you run with that. You talk about that.
Well, actually, my big takeaway on informed consent does not protect the patient. It only protects the medical provider. That's the whole point of informed consent. Because informed consent truly is not informing the patient. Providers can leave out what risks they don't want you to know. They can leave out alternatives they don't want you to know about. It's all up to them what they want to tell you or not tell you. So informed consent, again, does not protect the patient. It protects the medical provider. Some of my pet peeves with informed consent is you sign for medical students to be in there, you sign for sales reps to be in there, you sign for them to video you while you're in there. You never have access to that video. You never really know who is in there. The other things I don't like is the blanket clauses in informed consent, because I'm looking at an informed consent form right now. It says, I give permission for my doctors to do other procedures if they feel they are necessary. That is a big, big blanket clause. What they feel is necessary may not really be necessary in your opinion. The other one is you don't really, when you sign one of these forms, at least this consent form, and this is pretty standard, is you think you're signing for a certain person to do your procedure, but it says in the consent form that if they want someone else to do the procedure, you have signed this consent form saying that they can do the procedure. They may verbally tell you they're going to do the procedure, but according to this form, they have the right at any time to switch who is actually doing your procedure.
And okay, go ahead.
That is a big red flag. Now, there are other things on here, too, that are red flags, but those are the biggest ones that I think. The other one is I agree to the taking and publication of photos or televising during my operation. That's a big red flag. You do not want your procedure televised.
Mm-hmm.
These consent forms do not give you any place to mark this stuff off.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, many of them have gone to electronic versions of it, which absolutely you cannot physically cross anything off because it doesn't cooperate with you doing that. So what you have to do is in the signature area, you have to cram everything that you don't want into that signature area. Mm-hmm. That's the only way around that part.
So I'm going to jump in there and talk about, because I had it on my list too, about the, online or the e-signature or whatever you want to call it, the e-form, because it is, you don't get a copy of it. And all right. In my particular instance, and other ones that patients that I've spoken with, the person on the other side of the desk, because you're sitting at a desk with them and you're going to sign the informed consent, and this is sometime before your procedure. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes I've heard from people where they're, actually doing some of this stuff right when they've already had their IVs and their prep and whatever, and you don't know what drugs you've got in you at that point. So their argument is that, the drugs are going to coerce you to do something if you argue with them. But it
Right.
doesn't work both ways. In other words, it doesn't work that you can't really be coherent to sign this stuff at that point because now you have the IVs in you. So as
Right.
far as the electronic consent form, you're absolutely right. And it does say on some of them that I've read that you are signing this with the fact that you have been given a printed copy of it. Well, that's not even true. Unless you remember to ask for the printed copy, you don't get a printed copy, at least not that I know of right then. You don't. And I know in my particular instance, I said, no, I'm not going to sign any of this. I cannot read it. Mine was on a black screen with green lettering. It was very difficult to read. And I said, I'll have this printed out. So she walked out, the lady did, and it's just an office worker. It's not a medical person or a lawyer. So if you had questions, does an office worker have those answers? I mean, to me, they didn't. And I said, okay, I'll take the printed copy. And she handed it to me and said, now go ahead and sign it. And I said, I haven't read it yet. I mean, I wanted it printed so I could read it.
Yeah, they don't want you reading it.
No, they
actually.
don't.
Yes. Well, in my husband's case, there was no consent form signed by him. They committed medical assault on him. They had no consent form by his signature, and he was too drugged. But they got around that by omitting that he had been drugged. But the thing about the drugs is that so many people are forced to sign these forms in pre-op when they have been drugged,
Right.
and they say that you're alert enough to sign them. However, when there's an issue and you go to court about something that happened in pre-op, they say, well, you're not mentally able to know what happened.
Right.
So which is it? Are you mentally able or not? Which one is it?
Right. And the other thing, too, is that I found amazingly sad is that a doctor does not even have to, and I think this is nationwide, you'd have to, listeners, wherever you are, whatever state you live in, country you live in, you'd have to look this up for your specific locale. They do not have to sign the informed consent with you, or at any time that you're in the audience with them, they can sign it when they sign it.
Right. They do that. And also be very careful of these forms, because if they're multi-page forms, you may sign one place and make corrections on another page, but if they don't like what you put, then they can switch in another page with your signature page, and you'll never be able to prove otherwise.
So that's a big thing, and we've heard that since the beginning of whatever, such a legal society, that absolutely get a copy. So when you said, Jeannie, that there's no place on the form, which there isn't, for you to add like your addendums, whatever you want to call it, all you can do is cross out the lines that you're not agreeing to, like the videotaping or the students or whatever.
Right.
But from the instance that I know personally, and also from so many people that I've talked with and that have written me and are on Twitter and whatever, it didn't matter anyway. They did whatever they wanted.
No, I mean, my husband verbally refused a procedure, and so they drugged him and did it. So yeah, you can do everything, and they can still commit medical assault.
And so the big thing is the quote that you read on the one that you have right there in front of you that says, quote, that whatever the doctor's discretion, that's what goes, that's what you're signing for, that's what you're agreeing to, and it's up to him. And you know what? I agree with that to a certain extent, because we're not medical people, so something could arise in the surgery, because I want to give credit where credit is due. I mean, I don't want to beat up on everybody. There's some fabulous doctors, medical people out there, and you have to rely on someone, but the problem is it's gotten to the point where it's just willy-nilly that it's like they are right and we've lost all of our rights.
Well, and that's basically what it is. When you become a patient in a hospital, you lose all your basic human rights until you leave. And let me rephrase that, until they decide to let you go.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
because it's much like prison.
I think it's worse than prison, but we'll talk about that we'll talk about patient rights on another show. So real quick, Jeannie, give your contact information. You're on Facebook, you're on Twitter. I want to say real quick, Misty Roberts is a partner of ours. She is on Medical Patient Modesty on Facebook, and she is on patientmodesty.org.
Okay. I'm on Twitter at Rights for Patients.
And you've been listening to Planet Vero Radio. Please stay tuned.